I'm Bob Brill. He's Erik Kramer. Welcome to Kramer and Brill, a fantasy football podcast, now a video cast as well. You can hear the podcast wherever you get the shows. And also, you can see the video cast on YouTube by going to my Bob Brill YouTube channel or by finding the links for all of this at kramerandbrill.com. That's the easiest way. Just go to the website. It's right there. Just click on the video, or you can, at the top, you can click on the audio for the podcast itself. The bye weeks, we're in week 15, so they're all gone. So we're back to full strength. The winners this week among the quarterbacks had Josh Allen, 308 yards in the air, 109 rushing, 3 touchdowns. Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, Taysom Hill, Justin Herbert, and Ben Roethlisberger, who led another near comeback with 308 and 3 scores. And Tyler Huntley, who had 270 passing and 45 rushing, a touch and no picks, filling in for the injured Lamar Jackson.
And I'll throw in Matt Stafford. Here's a game that in his career, the knock on him is as great as he is, not, all the good things he does at quarterback, he's never wins big, meaningful games in the regular season, which usually happen in December. And here he stepped up this game, and I thought was great, given all the circumstances of the guys that not only were injured and out, but that day were out due to COVID. Comes up with 23 or 30 passing, almost 300 yards, 3 touchdowns. He was throwing no-look, accurate third down conversion throws under pressure. And, I just thought he played great. And the other guy I thought played great was Patrick Mahomes, 83%, a little over 250 yards, a couple touchdowns, and most importantly, no interceptions. And Matt Ryan, too. Also, not big numbers, 190 yards and a touchdown, but no picks either. And now you see the Falcons back in the playoff mix, along with most of the other teams that are 6 and 7.
Well, on the running back side, how do you stop Dalvin Cook? 205. Rashad Penny came out of nowhere in Seattle, 137, 2 scores. He's one of the big pickups this week on the waiver wires. Najee Harris had 94 plus 3 catches and 2 scores. And Kamara, Fournette, and Gordon all over 100 yards this week. Well,
the question you asked, how do you stop that? Account for every gap on defense. He wasn't getting touched till he was 20 yards downfield.
Yeah.
That was spoken and asked like a guy who watched Cook take a clear tear through his defense with the Steelers.
Yeah, I get to the second level before he even got to the first level.
Yeah, right. There was no first level. Yeah. I think, the Packers and A.J. Dillon, this is the exact time of year when a running back like that starts to show up and pay dividends, because he doesn't just get 5, 6, 8 yards. He gets bruising, demoralizing 8, 10 yards. And that's what he did, I think, the other night to the Bears, and really disheartened them. And then another guy that I put in that category is Leonard Fournette. I mean, it's when he gets the balls in his hands, you can tell the team, him especially, but then he lifts the team up with that physical style of play.
Wide receivers, Devontae Adams, 10 for 121 and 2 touchdowns. Hunter Renfrow continues to roll, 13, 117 and the score. Tyler Lockett had 142. Kittle, 13 catches, 151 yards. And Andrews, 11 for 115 as the tight ends. And you were talking about Andrews last week, saying he is a must start every week, even if you don't start anybody else on that team.
Right. I had heard somebody, I don't know if they tweeted out a little thing where guys dropping back like supposed to be Lamar Jackson, and just throwing it up, and like, Andrews has got to be out there somewhere, which is kind of what he did against the Steelers. Unfortunately, came up with an interception. The other tight end that I've been pointing out, and that you and I both agree, Dawson Knox with the Bills, he's athletic. He shows up in every game. Here he just came out of this last one with 7 catches for 60 yards, didn't get in the end zone. But then Godwin goes off again for 10 catches and 105 yards. And Mike Evans even added 91 in a touchdown. It's Higgins and with the Bengals that went over 100, but it was Jamar Chase that added 2 touchdowns and 77 receiving yards. So, and then the guy that I'd like to bring up too is Donovan Peoples-Jones in Cleveland. For the last, month or so, he's starting to show up weekly. And here again, he shows up with 90 yards on 5 catches. Even Justin Jefferson had another Justin Jefferson day with 79 yards on 7 catches.
The losers this week. I hate to say it, but Chase Claypool, who despite 17 fantasy points, cost his team 10 seconds with a first down celebration that was unwarranted, and with under a minute left as the Steelers were driving for a game-tying score, which didn't happen. He also had a taunting penalty early on, which cost his team momentum and helped stall a drive. Trevor Lawrence, 4 picks in a 20-0 loss to Tennessee, also on the losers list this week.
I also want a name that we haven't talked about, really anybody all year long in this category, and that's Dak Prescott.
Yeah.
Here's a guy that showed up and really could have put his stamp on, I have arrived. I've got the big contract now, but more importantly, I am that top tier quarterback. But then he shows up and completes under 60%, threw a couple of interceptions, one late in the game that was hit the linebacker right in the chest. And I think that takes his stock, to me, down, because this is a time when December, January, that's when a guy like Dak Prescott has got to elevate and stay elevated to get them in strong into the playoffs. And the other guy I'll mention too is Kyler Murray. Here going into this game, I think most people thought the Cardinals were going to give the Rams, they were going to walk out of it with a loss, but it was Kyler Murray and I guess more specifically Cliff Kingsbury who kind of fell asleep at the wheel. And Kyler was, kind of scrambling around, ended the game on a sack, by the way, with Aaron Donald, who had 3 for the game, but then, had a tip pass interception that was intercepted in the end zone on a drive they probably would have scored on. So I think those two quarterbacks there, they've kind of got to get the ship turned around internally for their team to get going.
And also among the losers, special announcement, in my Dynasty League, which has been around for 16 years, for the first time in 12 seasons, I missed the playoffs. However, my wife Paula made the playoffs. So beginning next season,
so the Brills are represented. That's the important part.
So you'll be sitting here with her next season. No, I got to give her props. She had to win the last game to guarantee herself in, but she didn't. And at the very end, she snuck in with the last playoff spot due to the tiebreaker. So there was
sure.
And I'll be drafting 4th next year, so that's not bad. In a rebuilding year, okay. We like Fournette, Cook, Jefferson, Uzoma, Renfro, Andrews. No Chiefs, despite the big win. None were fantasy worthy. Not even Kelsey, Kittle, and Herbert. Lockett and David Montgomery, all were solid. We liked all those guys. Well, it seems the NFL has really gone too far for many of us when it comes to sports gambling. It was one of the reasons there was never an NFL team in Las Vegas, and the first team to go there, the Renegade Raiders. Who else? So I was wondering about your thoughts on the gambling issue, because it's not new. It's just legally new.
Well, okay. So my thoughts are, I don't know if it's still this way. Let's just assume it is. On every locker room door leading out onto the field, in big red letters, is a sign saying, do not associate yourself with gamblers, and otherwise you will be out of the league. And yet here the owners are participating, no problem. And I know I know they own the game, so to speak. But to me, what's more important than that is being a custodian of the game first, then an owner. And I think you're taking what the only thing that can go wrong really with the NFL and football in general, other than concussions and so forth, is the association that games are being fixed. And it happens. And I think there should be a thick layer between a pro sport, whether it's NFL or any other pro sport, and legalized gambling.
I don't remember anybody off the top of my head outside of Paul Hornung, or since Paul Hornung and Alex Karras, who were caught in that mode, and that was in the 60s. So, yeah. I mean, and that was, you had baseball with Pete Rose and of course, going back to the 1919 Black Sox, where gambling has always been the worst thing. I mean, it really was. And you could be the worst scumbag in the world and do other things, but if you got caught gambling, even if you weren't gambling on your own team, you were out. You were ostracized. And we have this thing with gambling responsibly with coaches and former coaches
Mariucci,
on TV. Right. What is it? I can't think of the name of the sports company that's handling all the gambling. FanDuel.
Oh, DraftKings, FanDuel, right?
FanDuel, and all of them. And it's crazy. I mean, I just can't see.
I get how the sport has grown in large part due to things gambling, like fantasy football and legalized gambling. However, just because that's a fact doesn't mean the owners need to jump in that same boat. I mean, they aren't making enough money without also taking a chunk of that. It makes no sense to me to kind of make that line dotted It doesn't make any sense.
Are you hearing feedback from any players on that?
No, I haven't. I haven't reached out to guys. I don't know a lot of guys personally that play nowadays, but that doesn't mean that I don't know people around the game itself and broadcasters and guys that, I think even, I do know some of the Bears and some of the Lions players, but yeah, it would be good to kind of get some feedback on what they think about it. Cause for all of the stringent, I guess, rules on the field now that surround players on and off the field, how is it the owners are okay to jump in bed with FanDuel and DraftKings? I don't get that.
It's insanity. It really is. I can't think of another word for it. It's insanity for fantasy and for the NFL as a whole, and it's just crazy. Okay, let's take a look at this week's games, and this is the first week of fantasy football playoffs for some leagues, so it's do or die for some teams. Start with the Thursday night game, Chiefs and Chargers. Chiefs rebounded this week, and while that's great for the betting lines that we just talked about, it isn't so great for fantasy. None of the Chiefs stood out, and most looked pedestrian. Mahomes possibly to start. He probably had the best day, but Tyreek Hill, I'd go for a flex for him just because he's always one of those guys that can get you 2-3 touchdowns.
I love how, I'll say one comment on the Chiefs. I love how they've now they've gone away from being the fantasy football, like slam dunk, grand slam, to now a good football team. I love that. Because these are the kind of players they've got to win games. So Jeff, over to the Chargers, though, I'll say that anytime Mike Williams goes off, and he did this last week, they do well. And against the Giants, they just dominated start to finish. And the guy you need to pay attention to coming into this week is Austin Eckler, because he left that game, had a strong game going, and then had an ankle sprain and it didn't come back. And now they're playing on Thursday in a short week, so keep an eye on that. The other guy that didn't play is Keenan Allen, who's also a blue chip player for them. So, again, you got a couple injuries in terms of Chargers moving forward.
Saturday, we got a couple of Saturday games. Now we're into this part of the season. We'll start with the Raiders and Browns. Hunter Renfrow, and Hunter Renfrow. He's awesome week to week. He's possibly maybe Derek Carr at a pinch, but the only guy I'm really sold on here is Hunter Renfrow, and if you have him, you're starting him.
Well, the other guy that for the Browns I'll point out is Baker. Bench him. Although you probably already have. It's the Browns running game that all of a sudden, where did it go? Chubb is back in, but didn't really have any big day. And now they're getting the Raiders defense, which the Chiefs just dismantled. And so hopefully they'll come. This would be a great turnaround for the Browns because like everyone else, they got playoff aspirations.
Patriots and Colts, Indy coming off a bye. I like the big four of Taylor, Pittman, Wentz, and Hilton normally. I don't like Wentz against New England, and that limits Hilton and Pittman. So for me, it's just Taylor, Pittman as a flex.
My game of the week is this one. You got New England, which as of Arizona's lost last night, New England is the hottest team in the NFL right now. But it's no longer Brady versus Manning. It's Jones versus Wentz. And I love the running back combination in New England of Damian Harris and Ramondre Stevenson. Since it was Harris last week against the Bills, I'll bank on Stevenson coming through in a big way this week. I also like Kendrick Bourne's contributions as a receiver in New England lately. He's starting to become a guy they think that Matt Jones is going to more frequently.
Sunday, Cowboys and Giants. I'm not sure who to play here. I mean, I like Pollard, but he's been hurt, and Zeke is a flex at best these days. So after Dak's game at 11 points, he has been so inconsistent. It's like juggling basketballs. And that means the receivers are off the charts too. So I'm not really liking anybody here.
Hey, at the Charger game against the Giants, I sat with a buddy of mine who's a Giants fan, lifelong. And he was hoping that going into this game, he'd get to see Jake Fromm. Well, all of a sudden, Mike Glennon makes an appearance and starts, and for the second week in a row, falls flat on his face. So I think this might be the week Giants fans who maybe aren't fantasy fans at least might get a peek at Jake Fromm and what they've got there. But I kind of think with the Giants, there's really nobody fantasy-wise that you want to bank on.
Texans and Jags. I like Davis Mills this week, and also Brandon Cooks. They are playing the Jags, so I like both these guys over so many more established players.
You know who I think the Jaguar players would like to see start this game on the field? Urban Meyer. You talk about a guy that just keeps on digging himself a hole. This is crazy. Unfortunately for the Jaguars, there's really nobody to consider playing offensively. Their defense, no. Their offense, no. And I would just take a pass on the Jaguars.
Yeah, would you say they'd like to see him line up at center?
Probably anywhere, going across the middle. Who knows?
Titans and Steelers. Basically, but not mathematically, the Steelers are toast. Ben is on a roll, so is Harris. You just need to wait until the fourth quarter. I'm sold on Ben, Harris, and Freiermuth. Claypool's a flex and Boswell to kick. Steeler defense, that's a no-go.
Hey, back to your guy, Freiermuth. Were it not for an exceptional play at the end of the game, on the last play by the safety of the Vikings, he would have had his second touchdown, that one being the game winner. And I think for the Titans, though, other than Ryan Tannehill, and that you'd have to hope that he doesn't throw any interceptions. But because he's such a good athlete, you add his running to his passing. If he has even a B game passing, he's likely to add at least 40, 50, maybe 70 yards running. Yeah. Could get in the end zone as well.
Yeah, it's a tough one because the Steeler defense just, like we mentioned earlier, it's like the first level is not even there. Guys are getting to the second level before they hit the first. Jets and Dolphins. The Jets, I'm just going to take a pass here.
well, because it's the Jets, give me Tua, Waddle, and Gesicki, and let's just keep on playing.
You got it. Washington versus the Eagles against the oncoming Eagles unexpectedly. I like most Washington players, maybe because after last week, it can't get much worse. Gibson is so much better, as is McLaurin, but watch the injury wires. If he can't go, you might like Cam Sims or maybe even Adam Humphries.
You think of the Eagles quarterbacks, whether it's Hurts or Minshew, and you might think, oh, this is tempting. But coming off their bye, it maybe hurts at this point. But Washington's defense has found itself the last 5-6 games. You got Ron Rivera, who a lot of people forget was on that 85 Bears Super Bowl team as a linebacker. And pretty good player himself, has coached great defenses. And for that reason, I'd be leery of taking any Eagles in this game.
Cardinals at Lions. The Lions are playing better because they can't play worse. So look for Hawkinson this week if he's not injured. So keep an eye on the injury wires there. I like Goff this week even. And I really like Amon-Ra St. Brown. God, I love that name.
I think you just like saying the name as much as anything.
Greg Reynolds looked good, so why not? And he's hot on the waiver wires this week. He's a great story coming off the practice squad with only 2 NFL touches before this game, where he carried 11 times, 83 yards, and he also had a pair of catches.
Regarding the Cardinals, I know they lost last night, but I love what my boy, fellow Wolfpacker Steve Keim, their general manager, has done in putting this roster together. Murray has been putting up, prior to last night, all-time quarterback numbers in terms of not just percentage, but yards per attempt and everything, what he does running the ball. And then you got your boy James Conner, who has been lighting it up. I saw that the other night, he's second in the league this year in rushing touchdowns.
16 touchdowns total overall.
That's what I'm saying. And so you've got weapons here. You got Ertz, you got AJ Green. They don't have to have great games to themselves, put up great fantasy numbers.
And they're facing the Lions. So
bingo.
Panthers and Bills. Give me Robbie Anderson and let's just move on.
Okay. Good opponent here for the Bills to get a rebound game on, right? So you got Allen's one of the league's best quarterbacks, still put up good numbers last week. I think he's still going to put up good numbers again. You got the Panthers defense, which has been sliding a little bit. Diggs, Beasley, Gabriel Davis, I think they're all going to step up. And then we mentioned Dawson Knox a little bit earlier, but it's the Bills running game that's got me a little worried going into this, last stretch of the regular season, getting ready for the playoffs. This is the time of the year you have to have one. And then you can't have Josh Allen week after week being your leading rusher as well.
Bengals and Broncos. I said I liked Uzomah last week. I said he should get about 4 catches. That's what he got. and that was one off the team lead of 5. So I'm liking him again this week, plus a score. Otherwise, Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, along with T. Higgins and Joe Mixon, despite an off week for him.
And hey, based on what the Broncos did last week, the Lions on the ground, I expect more of that. So it was Melvin Gordon and Javonte Williams, more Melvin Gordon, but I think the combination of both of them gets you points and yards. You got the Broncos' 2 most consistent offensive weapons, and both of those guys, I'd ride them.
Falcons and Niners. Against the Niners, I don't even like Patterson, who will get snuffed again. I'd sit them all.
Well, Debo Samuel, I don't know if you noticed, came back last week. Didn't put up great numbers, but he ran the ball, made a catch or 2. I think this is probably the week he gets back in line with what he's done traditionally. Got that week to kind of get himself back acclimated again. Jeff Wilson's the guy that led them in rushing. Hasn't put up great numbers this week, so I wouldn't count on that in terms of him getting close to 100 yards or even a couple touchdowns. But George Kittle is obviously the guy that you can't miss on. Right. If you got him, I think you're playing him by now. But Garoppolo, of all people, had an excellent game last week. And so this might be a good matchup for him as well.
Seahawks at Rams. Tyler Lockett, who had 9 targets for 5 catches, 142 yards. He's back in the fold. Metcalf at least had 8 targets, but only 4 catches for 43 yards. Rashad Penny with 137 rushing. He's one of the hot guys on the waiver wire this week, and I'm liking all those guys this week. Metcalf, the least of the 3.
And for the Rams, it's Stafford and Kupp. I know it sounds like a law firm, but they're a very successful combination once they get the ball. Once Stafford gets the ball in his hands and delivers it to Kupp, it's usually a big play or a touchdown. And then you got Sony Michel that stepped up and ran the ball well, tough, hard yards. And then Odell Beckham came up big last night. And so I think he's somebody you can start to, now that he's getting acclimated, they're going to go into this stretch run here. Sean McVay's got to make sure that they feel good about themselves going into the playoffs. So I think this is a Rams team that's going to start putting up some good points.
Packers and Ravens, I'll take any Ravens quarterback in this game. It may be a big game time decision on Lamar Jackson due to that ankle sprain, but I think Tyler Huntley proved he's worthy last week. Had 270 yards passing, didn't throw a pick, had 40-some-odd yards rushing. Andrews is a play, of course, along with Devonta Freeman at flex. And Rashad Bateman, a wideout. I think I'd take a flyer on him this week.
This would be my other game of the week, Packers, Ravens. And then, how Reggie Jackson was called Mr. October.
Mm-hmm.
Aaron Rodgers should be called Mr. December. This guy is just untouchable this month of the year, and he's doing it again. So obviously, if you're lucky enough to have him, play him. Devontae Adams, of course, but after those 2, it's kind of a coin toss as to who else. Maybe A.J. Dillon, simply because he's going to get yards near the goal line.
I think Rodgers is a guy, if you're starting your fantasy playoffs this week, I think he's a guy that could be someone who carries your team, through the playoffs. It's just phenomenal.
Yeah, this is going to be the point in time when guys like him, and there's not many, are going to start to separate themselves.
Saints and Bucks, even when Brady is not great, he's good. He should shine again against the Saints. Sean Payton may have something up his sleeve, but I got to believe that will focus on stopping Leonard Fournette first. Now, if they do stop Fournette, Brady could be in for a long day. Either way, you got to start both along with Godwin and Evans.
I'll tell you 2 guys Payton has up his sleeve is Taysom Hill and Alvin Kamara. After that, it's not much, but Taysom Hill as a starting quarterback. Remember, he's playing with that what is it? Did he tear something in his finger, throwing hand?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
But the guy just went off last week, and then he's also somebody. If you happen to have the bad misfortune of getting pressure on him and flushing him out of the pocket, that's an automatic first down, maybe touchdown.
This is the guy that's playing with a splint on that middle finger.
That's what I'm saying. Like, as if he wasn't good enough as an all-around football player, no matter what position he's playing and no matter what, if it's special teams or offense. Now he's a starting quarterback. He's even better.
Monday night, Vikings and Bears, your guys. It's a tough divisional game. Vikings have been solid again offensively, and that bodes well for fantasy. I don't think they'll win, and they will be behind early. So that means volume for Cousins, and maybe less so for Cook. They must start, though, and so is Jefferson, who has really turned it on. Thielen has been hurt, so keep an eye on him.
Well, I'm not so confident in this Bears defense. In my opinion, they should be better than they are. But remember, now they've got Khalil Mack that's out for the year. Akeem Hicks isn't playing. And so, hey, you don't believe me? Just watch that second half of the Packers game. They just got humbled, for lack of a better word. And the Bears offensively, don't really have any fantasy options. I was high on David Montgomery throughout most of this year, but I think it's really Justin Fields, because he's coming out of a lot of games now where he's the leading rusher. So he's also going to get you touchdowns, not just passing, but rushing. And if you can limit the mistakes passing, which, I think he will against this Vikings defense, he's at least a legitimate consideration.
There you have it. Kramer and Brill, Fantasy Football Podcast, now a video cast too. You can hear the podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, Libsyn, Odyssey, wherever you get your shows. And now you can also see the video cast on YouTube by going to my Bob Brill YouTube channel, or by finding the links for all of this at kramerandbrill.com. That's the easiest way. And for my friend and colleague, Erik Kramer, I'm Bob Brill, and good luck in your fantasy playoffs. We'll see you next time.